官員、團體代表我哋休息完畢啦，請你哋返你嘅座位。
Please be seated. Please return to your seats. We'll continue with the meeting.
好多謝咁多團體代表。
I'd like to thank the deputations. First of all, I'd like the CSB to respond, and then the floor will be open for members' questions. Those who would like to ask questions, please raise your hands. Claudia Mo Pun Shiu Peng, Li Chak Yan, and myself. Okay. Bureau Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank civil service colleagues for expressing very valuable views today. The SARG does know that there is an increase of workload and also work pressure for civil servants. This is because the members have high expectations of the civil service every day. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank civil servants for working so hard, for being professional in delivering service. I believe the civil service is one of the treasures that Hong Kong has. We will continue to frankly communicate with you to understand your work situations. I'd like to respond to your views initially. Number one, the establishment and whether it can be increased. Every year, we actually increase manpower for the civil service, so we have enough people to execute our work. There is an established mechanism to review proposals from departments for an increase of manpower every year. I know your proposals are based on actual experience and also projection into future demands. At the CSB, we'll give consideration to the overall financial situation of the government, long-term financial commitment, and also your actual operation in order to allow you to increase manpower. And also, department heads have the power to cancel or delete outdated posts and make use of the resources saved to open new posts. From 2007 to 2008, on an annual basis, we have been increasing the establishment by 1% every year in order to launch new services and measures. And the establishment has increased from 160,000 in March 2007 to 170,000 in September last year. The so-called increase of 1% is not a fixed target. We have no policy of putting a cap on the increase of manpower by 1%. It all depends on actual need. In the last 3 financial years, because of actual operational need, most departments have seen their establishment increased. Some departments face a big workload, so their increase has exceeded 1%, say the Buildings Department, C&E, LCSD, Immigration Department, etc. And the new posts cover different grades and ranks. In the next financial year, we expect that there will be another increase, but the actual number is still being studied, and we have to wait for the budget before we can be sure. It is important to increase civil service posts, but then there is not the only way to tackle our increased work pressure. So we always ask departments to think of other ways to streamline present work procedures by restructuring the department, by redeploying manpower amongst the different jobs. And also, we may want to automate certain jobs or outsource the work as appropriate. So we encourage bureaus and departments to appropriately and reasonably prioritize their work as well. As for the use of human resources, department heads can look at the service nature and operational needs in order to decide on a way to execute their work. Normally speaking, if it is about law enforcement and if public services have to be directly provided by the civil servants, then the department heads should assign civil servants to the jobs. But if it is just seasonal, or if the work is subject to market fluctuations, then we can allow people to work shorter hours than civil servants, so you can engage people from the market, especially those with new technology skills. So you can still go for NCSC. As some colleagues said, in certain circumstances, you can seek to re-employ retired servants. But if NCSC posts have to do with long-term or permanent service need, then departments should seek to turn these into civil service posts. As at the 30th of June last year, there are 5,900 such posts which have been replaced by civil service posts. We'll continue to liaise with departments on this policy. As for succession, we are very concerned as well. We ask every department to draw up long-term plans. If there is an operational need or succession consideration, there is a mechanism to tackle the extension of service by civil servants who are at retirement age. As a member said, there is a 90-day extension after retirement, and also we also look at applications for re-employment. We can look at cases on their individual merits. And of course, the applications have to abide by the CSR and also relevant guidelines. But we have to strike a balance here. On the one hand, we hope to preserve the experience by extending service, but at the same time, we want to inject new blood and new impetus into the civil service. Some colleagues mentioned recruitment. As you know, we have revived recruitment in the past few years. We understand it's a long process. We have been trying to streamline the procedures so as to compact the timetable. And there are examples where people can take up the post before medical examinations. And if necessary, departments can advance the recruitment process because they expect people to be retiring. So there will be no gap in the service. Also, if necessary, they can create supernumerary posts for people to take up the jobs. And this can be applied to new recruits who need to be trained. So the supernumerary posts can continue to allow incumbents to stay on the job for longer. And also, apart from manpower, we understand that colleagues face work pressure as well. We ask the management to give more support to frontliners and communicate better with them. We hope that suitable training and other things can be done to support frontline civil servants. Number 5, members mentioned salary and conditions of service. We place emphasis on these as well, and through entry pay survey, salary or pay trend survey and pay level survey to make sure that the civil service is still attractive and that we stay competitive. In the past period, I can say that overall speaking, the wastage of the civil service is still on the low side, and generally speaking, our recruitment drives have been well received. But of course, we'll be watching the situation closely. We have to consider the conditions of service, that they should remain attractive on the one hand, but on the other hand, you understand we are spending public money and we have to spend it in a reasonable way. Lastly, colleagues are concerned about retirement arrangements. The present policy is that we would look at manpower planning, public finances, promotion prospects for incumbents, and employment opportunities for applicants, etc., before we set the retirement age. As you know, this is a complex issue and it has a long-term impact, so we'll address it with care. We are working with bureaus and departments to review the manpower situation and retirement of civil servants, and we will look at the special characteristics of the civil service so that we can find a feasible option of extending the service of civil servants. As for retirement, we do expect an annual figure of 6,000 by or in the years after 2018-19. It will increase to 7,000, but after 2023-24, it will gradually go down to 5,000. This is because we are taking on new people. We'd like to complete the study within these few months, and then we will look at the way forward. We'll certainly consult colleagues accordingly. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. There are 5 members waiting to speak: Ms. Claudia Mo, Pun Xiu Peng, Lee Chak Yen, myself, and Lo Wai Kang, or Kok Wai Kang, Emily Lau, Frankie Yik. First, Claudia Mo, 5 minutes each. Thank you, Chairman. This is like a civil service complaints meeting. The CSB is in a difficult position. It seems the government is not an employer that meets its requirements. But of course, it's not a personal problem for the Secretary. Talking about retirement age, it is better for people to have a choice. There are teachers and ambulancemen who are saying no to extending the retirement age because they don't want to work so hard for longer. They are saying there should be a voluntary choice. Well, actually, I have heard 5 representatives from the Immigration Department. They must be working so hard. They have to tackle Type B babies, cross-boundary students, and parallel goods traders, as well as the two-tin rule. And also, they have to process the normal arrivals. Mr. Lau saying that 3,000 people have to serve 230 million visitors. And people might misunderstand that the e-channels are a great help. But in fact, the e-channels cannot take the place of human presence. If women carry babies on their arms, they have to be checked manually. So you can't swallow that kind of workload. And you can look at the wording. They say they can't make ends meet. They have a gross lack of manpower. And just now the Secretary said you can streamline procedures, you can outsource the work. But no, I don't think you can outsource the work of the Immigration Department. So how can you do something right away to address the issues faced by civil servants in the Immigration Department? Secretary, thank you for the question. In terms of technology, I'm sure it is helping. I'm sure e-channels are not the ultimate solution, but I believe workload has been somehow lessened by e-channels, so staff have more time to tackle tasks that require human checking. But to tackle this problem, the Security Bureau and the Immigration Department would apply for an increase of manpower every year with the government. And there has been increases in the past few years. For example, in the past 3 years, there has been the creation of 460 odd posts. As I said just now, in the coming year, in the next financial year, we have also received applications from the Immigration Department through the Security Bureau, and we are looking into it. We hope that on the basis of operational need, we will see whether we can give more manpower to the Immigration Department. Thank you.
Question for Mr. Wong. Are you happy with Mr. Tang's reply? No. Now, on average, you say that it's an increase of about 100 staff, but it's an increase of 20% of the people entering and leaving Hong Kong. You're talking about border transits, and what about those regular students who come in every day, and also the refugees? And there are many applications in our headquarters. And on festive seasons, we have to move people to handle border entries and exits. So with only 100 people, you cannot handle that at all. So Mr. Tang is completely overloaded. We understand the huge stress, obviously. Now, as has been said earlier by some customs excise colleagues, the peak period varies. It's not well throughout around the year. So can the department consider second more people, perhaps even retired staff, to handle the festive seasons? So these options are up to the department to consider. Now you have to understand that if there's a permanent need, we will have to increase manpower. We have Mr. Poon now. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the deputations for your views. And it seems that the majority of the representatives here are of the view that there is a shortage of manpower in the civil service. And of course, Mr. Tang says that he understands the situation and that every year there will be a suitable increase of bodies. Now, my question is for Mr. Tang. Now, you have heard that there has been strikes because of a shortage of manpower in some departments, and we worry about the coming peak periods. Now, does the government have any concrete plans to deal with recruitment? Now, okay, you mentioned no ceiling, an increase of 1%, but have you done something for the whole civil service in the coming year? Now, you said that departments are allowed to hire people, but we've heard from deputations that given the excessive need, there is still a shortage. Now, you also said something about the retirement arrangement, and that in the coming semester or coming term. Now, tell us the progress so far. When are you going to give us a plan for consultation, and do you have a concrete timetable? I'd like to thank the Deputy Chairman for your question. Now, firstly on retirement. Now, last time I answered a member's question saying that by the second quarter of this year, we'll be able to give you something more concrete. Now, this is still the beginning of the year. Now, in this first quarter, we aim to finish the study. It's still ongoing at the moment, but when it's completed, we will let members know ASAP. Of course, it will be subject to members' scrutiny, but our aim is to finish the study in the first quarter, and then in the second quarter, we'll be able to give you an even better picture. Now, on recruitment, now in the past, individual ranks or grades are dealt with differently. You know there is a shortage of labor in general. Now, once a post is approved for opening, it may not be able to fill the post immediately. So the post is there, but then you have to compete with the rest of the market. So the problem is not only the government's. Now, on the other hand, now every year, the departments will come to the CSB as well as the Treasury for their proposals, including manpower requests. Of course, they are not just asking for manpower for the following year, but they may have, let's say, a 3-year cycle or 3-year plan, and they can ask for something longer term. So upon receipt of these requests from the departments and bureaus, we will look at the overall situation and decide what and how much to approve. Now, your answer remains the same, but quite insufficient. Now, there is a wave of retirees coming up pretty soon. Now, what are you going to do? Now, now, even among the directorates, we have approved the opening of such posts. But for those slightly lower rank, we do not have the full picture. But you have the responsibility to maintain the standard of service. Chair, 2 points here. Now, apart from directorate posts, which is increasing every year, and I can tell you more when we discuss the budget. Now, apart from the directorate posts, there would be additions of other posts. Now, on the other hand, whether the number actually meets the target, now this has to be left to individual departments, and after that they will give us the picture to be handled centrally. Mr. Lee Chuk-yan. Now, I raised today's agenda item, and I wanted to hear something from the government, something more specific and concrete. But I think Mr. Tang is not really giving us anything new. He's giving answers such as, okay, you can apply for manpower, we are not stopping you from doing that, and 1% is not the ceiling. This is not really true. But in fact, we have seen that in the past that 1% actually is the ceiling, or was the ceiling. So he really has a plan. You have another agenda, and which we do not know. Now, can you answer our question? Now, the FS is going to have a futures fund which will limit the growth of government services and deleting old services or existing services. And of course, we don't know whether anything can be deleted at all. And to limit the number of manpower. So you have the sword ready. Maybe is in the hands of the FS, and he can cut and chop and trim at his will. He has stated that there will be a limit in the amount of services. So on the one hand, we heard what you just said, but on the other hand, we are saying that there would be trimming and cutting and chopping and so on. Now, if you add one person, one body, it's still an addition. But now it's a big shortfall, especially in the immigration department. And not only the immigration department, you look at the whole of Hong Kong, there are so many bombs about to explode. You know, the mandatory checking of the windows, of the buildings and so on. But now this has to be slowed down, and the lands registry will have to fire the non-civil service staff. And on the one side, you have people being overloaded. On the other hand, you have people not having enough work to do. And because the HD is not doing what it wants to achieve, and things are dragging on. So, Mr. Tang, I hope you will answer the question whether the Financial Secretary has a plan to limit services and the growth of manpower. And secondly, how are you going to respond to this severe shortage of manpower? And thirdly, on retirement age, I hope you can have the timetable ASAP. I hope at the end, I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, you have to extend the retirement age, because some staff or retirees are being hired again. We're asking you to systematize that so that people can choose. Those who can choose to stay behind, and some can choose not to do so. Mr. Tang. Thank you for your question, Mr. Lee. Now, on retirement, now I have already said that study is ongoing, and different colleagues have different concerns. Now, we hope to have an option or plan which can satisfy everyone, and this will take time. Your second point on certain reports, I don't think that it's suitable for me to comment on this. Now, the 1% growth is definitely not a ceiling. And of course, it doesn't mean that it's 1% across the board for all departments. Now, for some departments with heavy workload, the number will exceed 1%. But there are so many departments. The pressure being faced is obviously not the same. So 1% is not the ceiling. And again, I have said, in the coming financial year, we are going to have an increase in manpower because of the overall increase in workload. Now, from the government's angle, we have to remember that we are using public funds. We cannot just approve any request. We have to ask the departments to really do everything they could to enhance efficiency. Now, there might be work not required compared to the past. So, Chair, I will queue again, but he is actually just mentioned his upper ceiling already. So it's my turn now. Mr. Tang, now in the first quarter, now on the retirement, now you will finish your study. So that's your internal study. So the next stage is you will consult the unions. So what is your overall timetable? And when can you come to Legco? Thank you, Chair. We haven't quite completed the internal study. So at this stage, I will ask you to bear with me that I won't be able to give you a very concrete timetable. But wait until we have finished the internal study, and when we start discussing with you, and we hope to come back to you again in the second quarter to let you know our progress. So, Mr. Tang, now I think it's a problem of common concern. I hope you will be really sticking to your timetable and be very concrete. First quarter finish by April 1st. You will be having something to us to discuss on the extension of retirement age, because this has an impact not only on the government but also on the private sector. Now, Chair, that's also our goal. Now, I also like to ask the immigration. You have many representatives here today. Okay, you don't have enough people, so rely on automation and to have more liaison or to hire retirees to help you during festive seasons. Now, do these plans work? Who would like to respond? Mr. Ngai. Just some supplement now on the retirees being asked to come back again. Now, our work is sensitive and has a huge impact on society. Our unions have reservations on this, because if the work is not done properly, it will affect the overall reputation of the government. Now, on automation, yes, it can help to a certain extent. Now, we have started our automation via different generations of identity cards, and we have been computerizing for a long time. But we also are taking up new work, application for SAR passports, people applying to be Hong Kong or China citizens. Now, all these work are not easy. And we don't want anyone to be abusing our medical system. For example, let's say you have a pregnant woman coming in, that adds to our manpower. Now, what about e-channels? They should be helping you. They are being used for permanent residents of Hong Kong. Yes, we are opening up for other travelers, but the travelers are increasing on a double-digit basis every year.
So still difficult. How do you open up the e-channels? Is it that you only have them open for frequent travelers with a good record? They still have to get registered first. They should have been in Hong Kong and they should come to Hong Kong frequently. The SCS has given us standard answers. I hope you will pay special attention to the housing department and other departments where the workload and the complexity of work have increased. At the Resource Allocation Committee, the SCS has a big role to play there, so please pay attention. Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the representatives of departments and unions for coming to express your views. I think you have talked about lack of manpower, high wastage, and peak of retirement, and I think you are already crying out loud for help, but the SCS is still quite calm. He says he will go back and study the issue. But what about frontliners? They don't have the time to study into any issues. They have to work continuously. They have no time to think about whether they can cope. Some of them have to work OT, and yet you still are talking about conducting a study. I think colleagues have already said very clearly that they need more people, and yet you said we should try other ways and means to cut down on the administrative structure, etc. And yet, what about flexibility on your part? You asked people to be flexible. You said the increase every year is not capped at 1%, but in the past few years, you have your hands tied. It seems you have not exceeded that standard. So how can you explain what kind of flexibility you have? You ask people to be flexible, but what kind of latitude do you have? You have the choice of studying into the issue at your own pace, but colleagues don't. We all expect the CSB to be forward-looking. The wave of retirement has not been mentioned just today, but it has been on the table for a few years, and yet you're still studying into the issue. How much longer do you need? The SARG has been taken to task for not projecting the population. And in the end, now we have the steering committee on population policy and is taking a comprehensive look, and of course is proposing an importation of labor which will be objected to by us. But at least there is a steering committee, and you should think on all fronts. My question for you is, CSB, you have the problem now expressed. Would there be a population policy for the civil service that is to tackle the retirement wave, the wastage rate, and also a lack of manpower? Do you really want to tackle the problem head-on instead of just the symptoms? SCS, I also like to ask you where the main problem lies. Is it that civil servants' perks are no longer as good, and as a result, civil service jobs are not as attractive as those in the private market, so recruitment and retention are both difficult? Or can you relate this to other problems? If you say there is a lack of manpower in the market, I don't accept it, because market force is such that if there is a lack of manpower, you enhance your benefits and you attract people to your side first, but you are unwilling. You say you just want to be at a par with the private market. However, you have a heavy workload, and civil servants also always face the criticism of the public. So don't you think you should have a population policy for the civil service and let us know the root of the problem? SCS? Thank you, Mr. Kwok, for raising a few important points. Please give me some time to explain things. Number one, manpower, the increase of 1%. But in fact, that's not the case. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. So that's the average figure. And in simple terms, this is not a cap. Of course, When I said there is flexibility, I hope you have not misunderstood me. What I mean is basically there will always be an increase of manpower, but apart from that, there are other things that can be done, redeployment of resources and also streamlining of procedures, etc. It is not that we only ask departments to do those things and not increase the manpower for them, but we believe departments should also be able to do those things. And then also it's mentioned that if you face short-term or sudden pressure, it is not a matter of increasing manpower because, as you know, recruitment takes time and people have to be trained. Now, of course, if you re-employ retired officers, that's a quick way of doing it, but sometimes it's not possible. And in the circumstance, individual departments will have to prioritize their work. And if something is of low priority, you have no choice but to attend to other issues first. We do understand that you can't do everything at the same time. As a colleague said, the buildings department has recently adjusted their work targets, and retirement and succession and also wastage. Let us reply with figures. In terms of recruitment, basically, it is not a problem. Most of the jobs are hugely attractive. As for wastage, this happens in certain individual departments only. We still think that the civil service is attractive, but talking about salaries, sometimes it's difficult for us to directly compete with the private market. You will understand that we cannot enhance civil service salary by a wide margin too quickly. As you know, we do have to look at the internal relativities, since the civil service is a big team, but we are stable and people do join the government because they have the spirit of service. Should we just compete with the market in monetary terms? That might not be appropriate as a policy, and we might not be able to do it anyway. So our policy is of course to keep the civil service attractive, but we might not be competing directly with the market in certain jobs. As for the wave of retirement, yes, we have known it for a few years, and in fact we have started to recruit civil servants to make sure that in every department there will be new blood replacing the old hands. Basically, this should not be a big problem, but we understand that in terms of population policy, since in the long term we face the aging of the population and also people now live longer, should people retire at an early age, we think we should rather encourage people to continue to work after retirement. That's the background. Yes, we will be keeping an eye on the retirement situation, but in fact we have been able to tackle the situation. Of course, there will be circumstances where we might like to retain people after the retirement so as to keep the experience there. But this is not something totally related to the population policy. We agree, however, that looking at the entire society, we should study the retirement issue, and also the government can play a demonstrative role to encourage people to continue to work after retirement. As for the mechanism, it is there. We have a mechanism to tackle this issue. We have a basic mechanism to increase manpower on an annual basis, and also on a regular basis we talk to departments about the manpower situation, especially the directors, deputy directors, and also assistant directors, and then the succession issue in departments. I understand that departments have different situations, and in a certain grade, if indeed there is a big wastage problem or recruitment problem, we can certainly look at that individually, and we can even consider the salary level. But overall speaking, the civil service remains attractive. Ms. Emily Lau, Thank you. Chairman, I apologize for coming in late. Let me just thank the deputations for expressing their views at the panel today. I have heard you and other colleagues say that there is a huge lack of manpower, and so civil servants have a difficult time. I am particularly aware of the Immigration Department because so many people are coming into Hong Kong. Sometimes they don't even have time for meals and the call of nature. But SCS, I think it's not only you, but other bureau secretaries have to be concerned. Our topic today is retirement age. I'd like to ask you this question from what you understand, especially I'm talking about the younger ones. Do they support extending the retirement age? I heard the SCS that perhaps there may not be this need because he says the civil service is still attractive. There are people who would like to join the government even if there are now vacancies. So please be brief. I believe you can raise your hands and the chairman will call upon you to speak. Yes. We are the basic ranks. As I said, after retirement, we do not have a big pension payment. Usually, we look for jobs once we retire. We are Mod 1. We do not have any particular skills. We do not have a strong education background. So we would go for low payment jobs in the market. The CSB would think, let's just outsource the work when people retire. And our colleagues are saying the only way out for us then is to be on CSSA. But now there is the option to extend the retirement age so we can hold down the job for a longer time and to earn a living. I think you should really consider the situation of lowly educated and colleagues with low skills. Mr. Tang, what about your younger colleagues? Do they support this? Yes, we, the grassroots, always support it. Thank you. There are a few others. Mr. Leung Chau Ting. Yes, Chairman. I'd like to talk about the younger generation. In the past few years, in the clerical grade, the new recruits have been at a level of 3,000 to 4,000. In every training class, they would tell us that if there is a chance, we should reflect this to the CSB. They are saying that when they retire at 60, they can only get MPF at 65. And what should they do between the age of 60 and 65? Those who are recruited under the new system will not have any benefits when they reach the age of 60. They don't even have medical benefits. And the younger generation would like benefits to be given to them as that for colleagues under the old system. And they are saying that it's better to extend the retirement age to 65. This is exactly what they are requesting. In our grade, if there are so many people, it is not a small number. Mr. Chen Kin-lun? Talking about age, I think I'm the youngest here. I am on the Civil Service Provident Fund as well. We are concerned about life after retirement. I hope we can really have a rest after retirement instead of having to worry. Because if I retire at 55, I will have to wait for 10 years before I can get CSPF payment. We don't have any benefits, and even the lump sum is given to us, we have to use it on medical consultation. We are quite willing to work. We'd like to have this right to work. We also like to contribute to society. As you know, in a disciplined service, knowledge and experience are important. Mr. Choi Yet Kung? I won't repeat what the colleagues have said. I would like to think from the perspective of the government. We are pensioners. If we extend by 5 years, the government stands to gain because we will not receive pension for another 5 years.
Okay, we now have Mr. Mack. Oh, sorry, Mr. Cheung. Yes. Yes, I am one of the minority who objects to lengthening the retirement period. Now, the MPF issue, the gap between 60 and 65, should be discussed under the MPF platform rather than using the extension of retirement age platform. Now, it seems that we are now talking about solving the economic problem or livelihood problem after retirement rather than working on the policy, population policy. In fact, the direct answer is to hire more people. If you don't have enough people, you should hire more people, not staying on until 65. Now, if you don't have enough people, then all solutions are not going to work. Mr. Yip Chi Ming, I'd like to thank all the deputations coming here today. Now, on solving problems, not only adding the number of bodies. Now, that is not the only solution. Okay, immigration, I can observe that they have a lot of workload and they should be given more manpower. But for other government departments, they can improve their efficiency to save manpower, because adding people means spending public money, and the CSB has to be very careful. Now, on extension of retirement age, I am in favor. I would like to tell you that for the private sector, it's usually following the contractual spirit. You get your lump sum and then to sign the contract again. I hope the government will do the same thing and not just extending the retirement. Now, Mr. Kok Wai Keung's point about if you cannot hire people, just add the pay, increase the pay. But that is not the only solution. Now, there has been a discussion in the chamber on, let's say, the transport or logistics. Well, you cannot increase fares or increase fees, but because of a dip in the industry, you cannot increase people's salary because the business is declining. If you increase the pay, then the business has to close down. Mr. Tam Yu Chung. Now, as the population ages and a lack of manpower, together with the retirement wave in the coming 10 years, now we should look at the retirement age extension. I think there is a need for this. Now, I've been in touch with the discipline services, and they've been saying that they hope that the government can extend the retirement age, or to give them an option, a flexible option, because for discipline services, their retirement age is earlier, at 55, and these days, people at 55 can still be very capable, and they can continue to serve Hong Kong. So the DAB has taken the initiative to ask the CSB to review the situation. So maybe they can help the discipline services first, rather than doing it across the board. But then the government said that they will have an overall review for the whole civil service. Now, of course, I agree that lengthening the retirement age will result in other issues. This is something we understand. And of course, with this move in the civil service, the other sectors of society may be affected too. Yes. But I believe this is a question that needs addressing. A solution has to be found, on the one hand, to satisfy the needs of society and to give them certain choices. Because if there are structural changes, we have to be really careful and comprehensive. So I support this review, and I hope that results will be produced, and in the process there should be more consultation with the civil service unions. So this is my view, and it's not a question. Any response? Yes, I quite agree with Mr. Tam. Just a very simple response. Now, apart from the discipline services, there are other requests from other workers and staff. So we should be comprehensive. Now, for the implementation, there might be a phased implementation, but at least we should have a plan that everybody knows. But for the implementation, they may be done in phases. Of course, I haven't finished the study at the moment. Now, I hope colleagues will understand that this is a complex issue, and you may have different concerns. This may not be the best scenario, but we hope to handle or answer all questions from different sectors. Now, the junior rank staff members want to extend the retirement age. This is something I fully understand. So the first thing to review is whether they're earning enough and saving enough for their retirement. If you change it to the MPF or the CSPF, you can do the calculation. Now, if the salary is so meager and people are not saving, they can only work longer. I understand your concern, but this is no way out. Now, how come people elsewhere can survive after retirement? Because they are making enough and they can take part of it for the contribution to the retirement fund. But with a very low salary, and that's because the contract staff are dragging down your income. But your solution is not the way out. To work longer to protect your livelihood after retirement, this is very, very sad. Now, some people can retire at 40. I have friends like that because they're making huge money by trading in stocks and shares or properties. Now, this is not fair. You can tax the employers more heavily because civil servants are helping the rich, serving the rich, rather than serving the general public. I understand your situation, but I do not really favor the solution. If you have all these elderly people doing the jobs, then what about the young people? They have no chance. Is Mr. Ngai still here? Mr. Yik, he is left. He mentioned that Kok Wai Keung's point is not reasonable. In fact, the government's responsibility is, now, if a certain trade dies down, you should develop another trade to take up the people. Now, that is because this is what happened in Japan and the US, but the government is now only working on property. And you cannot blame the labor because they cannot create a trade. And the rich blames the poor, and that is not fair because the labor market cannot create another profession. What I'm saying is, if you are going to do it comprehensively, the provident fund should be inflation adjusted, so that solves the problem of inflation, and then the 5-year gap has to be deleted and people can get their provident fund immediately. Otherwise, they can only apply for CSSA. They have to reform CSSA, and that's why I was doing this in LegCo, and you are going from worse to even worse situation. And if you were to change your work nature, this is not the proper way out, and the Provident Fund is not solving the solution, and they should be paying you to solve the problem. Now, Mr. Yik has left the chamber, but in fact, our Gini coefficient is 0.53, and there's a very big gap between the rich and the poor. And the low salary workers, they are on the edge of hell, as it were. I understand your plight, but your proposed solution of working another 5 years is not the solution. And if you work so hard as to be sick, and you have to spend all the money on medical expenses. So this may not be very pleasant hearing, but this is the truth. If you work until you are 72, you die in 72, and then you retire at 71, and you only have 1 year of retirement, that is not the way out. I think there must be other solutions. Thank you, Mr. Leung. Now, second round, beginning with Mr. Lee Cheuk Yan, 3 minutes. Just to follow up on my initial question. Now, I think Mr. Tang is bypassing the view of the Financial Secretary, Mr. Zhang. Now, it is not to reduce the regular expenditure by 1%. If you do that, how can you possibly increase manpower by 1%? You have to clarify this, because if the FS is saying that the over expenses were to be reduced, how can you increase manpower? Especially when you are sitting on the committee deciding on the allocation of resources. Now, the FS would say that we're going to reduce our recurring expenses by 1%, then how can you propose an increase in manpower? Because the cut will include manpower. Now, Mr. Ip Kin Yuen also told me that regarding teachers, you have to record this, because this is very unfair. If you work until retirement, and if you have a birthday on the 1st of November, then you have to leave on the 1st of November, halfway through the teaching semester. You should let him finish the whole academic year. Now, for government schools, this is the case, and we are raising this. Now, we have no EDB people here today. You should let the teachers continue until they finish that academic year. Mr. Tang, can you answer on behalf of the Education Bureau? Maybe just a written response from the Education Bureau? I'll ask the ED to do that. Now, we reckon that in the coming financial year, now I cannot give you the details, obviously, but we reckon that there would be a significant increase in manpower. Now, I think this is colleagues' major concern. Now, for a longer-term arrangement, those lie outside our ambit. Now, your concern is whether there would be an increase in number of bodies, and the other issues will be dealt with on other occasions. Now, we will have to wait until the budget comes out, but we reckon that in the next financial year, there will be an increase in manpower. Now, just one more sentence from me.
You can see that if you look for blessings from the government by giving you more manpower. That won't do. Please be prepared to take industrial action, because you really have to show them your might before they would say yes. Okay, it's now exactly the ending time for their meeting. I thank the deputations and I thank the administration for their response, and I thank members for coming. Thank you.